Good afternoon, everybody. It's truly a pleasure for me to be in conversation with these incredible artists here. Tariq Karimboy, Shalini Dam, Vivek Matthew, Dinesh, and Ganesh. Our topic for discussion is dynamics of movement. Before we move into the conversation, I thought I'll just briefly set the tone for this conversation based on three keywords: movement, senses, and the Navarasas, which is the overarching leitmotif for the arts program at the BIAL, which Latika Gupta has so beautifully articulated in her essay. Movement, as we all know, is the very essence of life. To move is to live, and to live is to move, to be alive. However, as a larger society, I think I can safely say this, that we have reduced the idea of movement to mean large leaps, to mean linear movements, to mean material success, to mean quicker accomplishment of milestones, and an exclusively outward movement that is triggered by forces of capitalism and consumerism. And this is something that is reflected in the stress and tension, and these are also the words that Latika uses in her essay. This is reflected in the stress and tension of our urban experiences of travel, whether we are traveling through the airport or whether it is through the excruciating traffic of our cities. In other words, movement has become all about reaching the destination. And in this process, what we have been pushing away is an appreciation of movement that is non-linear, movement that is sometimes quiet, sometimes imperceptible, and movement that is journeying inwards, movement that is deeply in the embrace of the senses, and movement that is pregnant in a moment of pause, and movement that is in a constant state of breaking and becoming. The Navarasas themselves are a celebration of the aliveness of all this movement. They resist any form of fixity, as each rasa is in a constant state of flux, being continuously shaped by the ever-changing relationship between the artist, the viewer, and the work of art. As we discuss the dynamics of movement, I am reminded of the lines by the 12th century philosopher Basavanna, who said, "Sthavara kalivuntu jangama kalivilla," which means there is death to the static, but there's no death to the one that is moving. So on that note, I'd like to first invite Tariq Karimboy to talk about his work at the BIL at T2. Tariq has training in the arts, in industrial design, and in architecture, and his works juxtapose the old and the new, creating sculptures that are modern and minimal in form. Tariq, inviting you to talk about your work.
It gives me great delight to be here in front of an audience talking about my work. Now, in terms of rasa, this is rasa from many facets. It's rasa looking at it through a kaleidoscope. Now, what I do is very, very simple. I look at the distillation process of a piece of wood, for instance, in my installation here. And then I say, I'm in love with the pendulum. I'm in love with how does something move to create a certain tranquility, to create a certain movement. So what I did here is I took a white oak. White oak is very, very hard. It's got these grains to it, very minute grains when you cross-cut it. And when you edge-cut it, you see another side to it, which is a more complex weave that weaves into another pattern that weaves into a third pattern. Now the idea was that, how do I distill it into its pure element? So what I did is I took a torch. I took a torch and I burnt it. I took it, and when I burnt it, I spent more time looking at it than I spent actually burning it. Now, when one burns wood, it takes on a completely different character. You fall in love with it because you see another aspect of nature that you've never seen before. So all of a sudden, I saw these grains talking to me, and I'm looking at it, and I'm saying, now what should I do next? And then I burn it a little more. It's like having a glass of wine. You drink it, and you look at it, you drink it again, and then you swish it around, and you approach it again. It's a very painterly approach. And then you say, okay, I want it black there. But what the black does, in essence, is it removes the moisture from a form. Now, when it removes the moisture from a form, that means it becomes light. And if I was to draw a straight line in terms of gravity, the gravity is right in the center, and since I've burnt the top, I move it. So it goes tick, tock, tick, tock. Now, this goes on for about 22 minutes. If I come a little closer to the wood, and I see the cross-cut wood, it's a composition of 67 parts. Each 67 parts is again cross-cut in diamond form. Now, diamond forms are like little cups going right and left, like little hands welcoming you to the airport or welcoming you and saying hello. And then I have a little bindi, which could be the third eye, but in essence what I've done is I've removed mass from that piece of wood. By removing the mass, I'm again distilling it and distributing that weight to its center. So it's like a dancer. It's like a rag. And the dancer's dancing, like a ballerina dancing, basically, on her tiptoes. And that was my approach. And then I said, listen, Bangalore has what's old, Bangalore has what's new. What's new is technology. So the base on which it sits on is surgical steel. That surgical steel not only reflects the wood, but it gives you see a whole new vocabulary of pause, of movements that one would never discover if one really looked at it on a front elevation. And you know, where that tranquility gives it another movement of joy. And I thank you for getting me to be part of this panel and for this piece being a presence in Bangalore. I've named it after my daughter, so I have to keep coming here to visit her. Thank you.
Thanks, Tariq. I think this was the only piece that we missed watching yesterday while we were on the walk. So I really want to go back to T2 and watch this work of yours. We watched all the other 4 pieces yesterday. We'll next move on to Shalini. Shalini has a background in economics, and then she was trained in ceramics. And she uses her piece to explore contradictions and dualities that are hidden under the surface. Shalini, we saw this lovely work yesterday at T2. Please tell us more about it.
Hello. So I'll start with the piece is called Find Me a Love Song. And so actually for the piece to make meaning, the viewer has to walk across it. So you see one image from one side and another from the other. And how I go about it is that I cut the surface of clay in a way that it animates it. So while you have only 50% of the information on one side, you make up the rest. You know, the viewer fills in the rest himself or herself. In this particular piece, I've taken windows from various eras of windows from Karnataka from various eras, and windows from buildings that were built for different purposes. So one is from a library, one is from the Vidhan Soda, one could be from a palace, one is from a village home, and one I kept which was from an art form, the Chittara art form. So that's an imaginary window. And as you move across it, it transitions into a butterfly, which again is the state butterfly of Karnataka, and to depict change. And then it's got these scattered letters from, poems and in Kannada, in Urdu, in Malayalam, and other languages, as well as endangered species, be it bugs or elephants, and I've kept the size the same. Like, we all belong and we all need to take that much amount of space. Like, there's no hierarchy. Um, and I've also put in little tiny messages, so if you look for it, you'll find other things. And then I've done emoticons because that's the language of today. And yeah, anything else.
Lovely. Yeah, it reminded me of yesterday while we were watching this. As children, we all collected these 3D cards, which would have these different kinds of images viewed from different angles. So this was very playful for me in that sense to, yeah. You already thought about that, I'm sure.
Yeah, so that, I think while there are other rasas that are overlapping, this, because the viewer has to walk across it and it changes, there's a certain amount of playfulness and joy that I hope the piece brings.
Great, thank you, Shalini. About Vivek, Dinesh, and Ganesh, I'd like to talk about their works as some sort of a triptych, actually, because they are about the green, they are about the forest and the grove. So I'll introduce all three of them together and ask them to respond and talk about their works in sort of a very interconnected way, because the works are actually interconnected. Vivek's tryst with, all of them are photographers, all three of them are photographers. Vivek's tryst with photography began with the simple thought that he wanted to capture the brilliance of that moment. So it's about capturing, about freezing, about becoming one with that moment, which is just going to sort of come in and disappear. So, and he's trained in photography in the Light and Life Academy in OT. And he brings this beautiful work called, which is the Nallur Tamarind Grove, which you will see in one of the vestibules. So all of their artworks is in the 3 vestibules as we enter T2. Dinesh Manir, who's there, is also a photographer. He's based between Bangalore and his Uru, which is on the coastal Kumta, which is Kumta. So he also divides his time between Bangalore and Kumta. He has actually been looking at different kinds of cultural practices in Karnataka. So Karnataka, his work has mostly been rooted in practices, artistic cultural practices of the state. And what he has given to us here in T2 is this lovely image from the Ramnagara forest. And he'll talk about it as well. Ganesh Shankar, again, is a nature photographer. And over 2 years, for over 2 decades now, he's been focusing on photography with an emphasis on creativity and art. And at the T2, we find his bamboo grove. So all three of them, what is interesting is that they were responding to a very celebrated Kannada poet, K.S. Nisar Ahmad's, again, another celebrated poem of his called Nityotsava. It's a beautiful poem. Many of you here would know it. The poem in Kannada is a celebration of the state, but also mainly a celebration of the forests and the greenery and the lush abundance that the state has always had. The forests, the rivers, the mountains, everything, the natural landscape, the abundance of this state. And Nisar Ahmad has actually been called the Nityotsava Kavi, and Nityotsava meaning an everyday celebration. So it's not, picking a day to celebrate, but there's a joyous celebration of this life of this abundance every single day. And that's so beautifully represented in all their works. And incidentally, Nisar Ahmad himself was born in Devanhalli, where the airport today is. So there are lots of connections to the poet, to his poetry, and the way in which the three works have been curated. So I'd first like to invite Vivek. Would you like to talk about your work?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I've taken it at the Tamarind Grove, which is very close to BIL at the moment. So this is about it's about 300 years old, the trees over there, and it lasts for about 200 years. So I really love this place because it's filled with nature, something which we miss in the urban cities in the center. So something, the best getaway to go and really be with it. So I wanted to capture the space and get the essence of the part of nature, yeah.
Lovely. And also, I was reading that the Nallur Tamarind Grove is actually like a heritage site. Can you tell us more about the geography of that place? And
Yeah, there's a Chanik Vashar temple, I'm not able to get the name right, I've written it, over there, which has been many years, so it's a lot of heritage site over there, and the trees are part of the place, so it's one of the, it gives a lot of character to a space, which those days would have been wonderful, so it's just very imaginative to think about those days. Yeah.
lovely. Thank you. And we'll move on to Dinesh. Dinesh, would you like to talk about this Ramanagara experience that you've brought for us at T2?
Hello? Yeah. So I was contacted by this agency, Tiger, and of course Yamini, and they said they want a photo for the airport. Okay, I thought another poster. So in the beginning I was not that interested, and then I got the concept that it is going to be in the one of the vestibules. Three vestibules, three good best photographers. Ganesh has been my mentor always, so three best photographers of Karnataka. So it was all of a sudden, sounded very interesting. And then we had meetings, a lot of discussions, because the first thing, when photo comes, we see that as a 2D, right? It's like on a wall or something, or a poster or something. But here, the passenger has to move, in between the image. So I was thinking, how we are going to do that. So then we thought of, this concept of a 180-degree panorama. So the photo starts with, like left to right, all in one image. Now there are two challenges. One is the technique itself. So how do we get 180-degree panorama? Of course, we can stitch together, join it, and post-process it. But it should look like one full photo from left to right. All in one photo. So that was the first challenge. Second challenge was the concept itself. It cannot be some simple location or some simple forest, right? It should be like passenger he's starting at the airport, so he starts he's leaving to some location, so he goes through right in the entrance, and he should stop for a moment and see what is going on here. He should be surprised after seeing that image. It cannot be just some beach or some waterfall or something simple. So it has to be Indian, and the moment he enters, if he's entering in the left side, so he will definitely look at the left side of the wall, and then he slowly starts the ceiling, the wonderful ceiling we have, and then he starts looking at the right side of it. So this was the concept, and we took that as a challenge. It was not so easy. Lot went behind it. Like, I can tell you a small detail. Like, we stitched 60 to 70 photographs because of the length of the print. We needed almost 60,000 pixel on one long edge. That is a digital term, of course. So this was the challenge. And then in the same time, we have to show, you know, we have to stun the passenger passing by through. So Ramnagara was accidentally chosen by me. I was given a topic of Western Ghats actually, because my native is Kumta, and you know, Western Ghats was my born place. So I took a lot of photos. It was raining, you know, between the leeches, all those things. I'm not going to talk about them, but those were not selected. And I had some connection with this place. I've been to this place in Ramnagara for, I think twice I've been there. These are champa trees. In Kannada we call as Kadu Sampige, or in English it is Plumeria alba, or I don't know the Hindi term for it. So these champa trees, they change according to the season, right? When winter comes, all the leaves will be fallen. You will see some flowers, and then the flowers, even, you know, you see on the, you know, flowers on the ground. So it will be beautiful. But the T2 airport itself is an art piece, and the theme was like green. So I had to make sure that I have leaves enough to cover the ceiling. So I went in, I think July. I started taking the photo at 4:14. 44 second, I started it. You know, it's like you take like this, and this. Each row, we are taking 17 photos and stitching everything together in the post-processing. So I started at 4:14 p.m. and ended at 5:01. You know, this is like 45 minutes I had to make one image. So these are like on a frozen timeline, small captures all along the way, almost up to end of, you know, this 47th minute. So if the passenger is passing by through, you know, through that gate, he's actually walking inside a frozen timeline. He can see every single leaves recorded in that timeline. Then he passes through. So he will immediately go into that probably next art installations, or probably his destinations. So that is what came into mind, and I had this location in my mind, and I went there. It was amazing experience. So this particular photograph, it's, I think, post-processed by one of the best photographer of India, Amit Pasrija. So he post-processed it, and it came fantastic, you know, yesterday, because it's not like your 3D installation, art installations. We never get to see our photos. So we can see on our largest of the largest screens, but it is still just one 2D. But when I saw there yesterday, walked through it, I was really stunned. It came really beautifully.
Yes, and we, all of us who watched it, who witnessed this, all their works, can truly vouch that they're all stunning in their own ways, and they evoke the different kinds of rasas in their own ways. We move on next to Shankar, who's made this lovely bamboo grove. Shankar, please talk about that.
Hello?
Ganesh Shankar.
Yeah. First of all, let me thank Yamini and Bayal team for giving me an opportunity to be part of this project, and I really enjoyed doing this. I think, as Dinesh said, this whole process has had a lot of the challenges, difficulties. Actually, I might have made about, say, 10-15 images going to different places. I think thanks to the strict the process, Yamini and her team rejected many of my images. so, so first actually I went to Badra. I was in Badra jungles to make an image and made some images. And then I went to 3 different places in Western Ghats. I went to some place near the Kollur, there in the Western Ghats. And I took a lot of the special permissions from Forest Department to go to some remote the jungle in the Western Ghats, and there was a stream and a lot of leeches, and I made a lot of images. So as Dinesh said, each image, making an image takes lots of time because we have to stitch. See, the problem with this large print is so every inch needs about 300 dots. So that means to make an image of this size, of a quality, requires only way you can do that is stitching. Very high resolution images, and stitch it and make these images. But the challenge is since it is 180 degrees, so you in the field you don't know whether it will stitch properly or not, because there is an extreme curvature that has to be achieved in the final print. And the only solution we have is okay, do the trial and error. When you want to make one image, you make say some 4 or 5 images. Each making an image will take about, say as he said, some 30-40 minutes. So and then the situation in the jungles are also not the very helpful. See, in Kollur, what happened is many times, okay, I mean, I was halfway through the image and then one raindrop falls on the lens, and that whole thing will get spoiled and it won't stitch at all. So, so there are several such the technical challenges. So you're not sure till you come back home and do this stitching. And I used to do my own stitching, and in the night I will give this image for stitching in the computer using some specialized software. In the next morning, I will know whether it is stitched properly or not, because it is a very compute intensive whole process. It is a bit the challenging, but I really thoroughly enjoyed this. So other thing I just wanted to talk about, I mean, you mentioned that I'm a nature photographer. I think the one thing I need to tell you here is probably there is some amount of naivety in that word, the nature photographer. Okay, so I've been doing this nature photography for about say more than 25 years. The naivety is this. So when you hear that word nature photographer, the first thing that comes to you is, okay, he's a photographer who makes an image of elephant or a river or the landscape or whatever it is. Yeah, that part is correct. But the nature photography has other facets and other possibilities which gets into the realm of the creativity and art. So in this 2 to 3 decades of my photography, the first about 7-8 years I was doing this what fits that the common meaning of the nature photographer. Okay, the person who photographs elephants and rivers and things like that. So then actually I spent about 10 years on exploring the nature as a form of art. How can I express nature very differently? Okay, I mean, how do I express emotions in my photographs? Say if a Hindustani classical singer can say sing Megh Malar and portray the mood of a monsoon, and it should be much easier for me to visually represent, or I have far more control over the visual medium than an medium which is not the sound or whatever it is. So I mean, it should be easier for me. I mean, I was just thinking that. I mean, so I spent about 8-10 years doing lots of abstract work, trying to use elements of the nature and abstractly portray emotions, feelings. And after that 8-10 years, I mean, I kind of felt that, I mean, there is something again missing in this journey of photography. Now I do pursue nature photography from a different perspective, and what I call a philosophical nature photography. This has kind of roots in basically pantheism, and I'm kind of influenced by the philosophers Baruch Spinoza, Immanuel Kant, and our own DVG. So the beauty I realized is that when you photograph nature in its all grandeur, if you think about it deeply, you will realize that you cannot say anything, because I mean you really don't know. I mean, the leaf is not a leaf. Okay, so if you see that in a lot of detail, you just I think saying anything is very childish about nature, because we are so small in this whole the grand scheme of things. From say subatomic particles, we don't know anything. From the cosmos, you don't know anything. So that way, I think it is very, very difficult to make a statement. So that is when I realized what the DVG said, "Holi ninna tutigalannu mankutima." So that means you stitch your lips, don't say anything. I think that is really makes sense. So these days, as a nature photographer, what I want to say something through my images is, I tell myself that you cannot say anything.
Thank you. And it's actually true that when you look at these artworks, you're just stunned, your jaw drops, and you don't know what to say about these works. What I really found beautiful about all these works, in the earlier panel, we were actually looking at digital art where things are in motion, there is movement, and we are appreciating what is moving, physically, actually, virtually moving in front of our eyes. And here in all these works, there's a beautiful kind of stillness. And yet, to see the movement within that for me, it was absolutely, it was a very moving spiritual experience, I must say, because we are sort of experiencing movement even when we are looking at these static images or static works of art. So the interplay between what is static and what is in motion, like I earlier said, quoting Basavanna, that the Sthavara and the Jangama are always, playing off each other. The movement has the pause has movement, and it's somewhat like the act of breathing in and out. It's so imperceptible, we don't even know, and yet there's a stillness, there's movement to it. And what is also beautiful in all their works is that they're working with elements of nature. There's wood, there's clay, there's photographing nature, where actually the artists are working with, it's almost like they're working with another protagonist. And there's that playfulness that's coming in, right? There's things that are completely out of our control, things that you don't know how they're going to turn out, what will emerge out of it. So I'd like to ask each of you, what is that process, or what is that emotion that you've been experiencing while you've been working with these elements of nature, who are protagonists in their own way, and they are also playing with you, you are playing with them. What was that process for you, Tariq?
Well, I'd like to break it up into three parts. Yeah. One is this MIT professor called Dr. Edgerton. His name was Doc Edgerton, they used to call him. And the fascinating thing about him was that he made the invisible visible. For instance, you go ahead, you see this, and suddenly it freezes, and then you know what it actually is. So what he did is he took a golfer, the golfer was playing golf, you couldn't see it at the eye, but after he created the strobe, you could see every movement to it on one hand. Then on the other, you see the city of the city of Hampi. Now, Hampi is an incredible city built out of quartz. Quartz has a certain weight. It has a certain tensile structure. It has a certain compression structure. Now, it's very interesting. Coming from the architecture point of view, and my work is very, very, very simple. I try to distill it to its basics. Now, when you look at the city of Hampi, you see this quartz, you see a beam, you see two columns, and then you see the temples at the background. And you say, wow, that's like lace. It's like stone quartz that has this rust color, and it's so powerful. And then you step back again, and you say, it's so simple, and it's so beautiful. That simplicity, that static quality is what really I search for in my work. So when I burn a piece of wood and it turns to ash, I take shellac and I go over that ash. And then what beautifully happens is that ash, I could say Lord Shiva's ash, becomes black in color. And then once you put linseed oil over it and then you put beeswax over it, it becomes like steel gray. And it takes on another character. Now, all this is a metamorphosis, it's a movement. It's not Anish Kapoor saying, I own black. It's black that came from a kajal. It's black that came from the earth. And the beauty of actually Karnataka, Bangalore, is that it's got this historical context. And the beauty of all of us present today is that the airport is a sum of our parts. And what I'd like to say to my piece in particular is deja vu. You've seen it, you've been there, and you remember it as it used to be. And the reason being is because it's so simple, it's so natural, it's kinetic, it's soothing, and most of all is you see that little hole, and through that little hole, you see the reality of the world around it. I thank you all. Yamini, thank you. And this is a very special airport. I've been to so many airports in the world. But what makes it really special is, okay, SOM, Skidmore and Merrill designed the structure. But who gave it life? All of us, together. Thank you.
Yeah, from that window to Shalini's many windows, what was the experience of movement for you when you were working with clay? And how did clay play with you?
So, actually, this is an old story. This happened when I went to do my master's. And I was from advertising. And I was so scared that somehow, advertising will not leave me and I won't find whatever is it that I wanted to do because you work on briefs. So I decided to just play with clay. So with no preconceived idea as to what I'd be making, nothing, just playing with it. So folding it, cutting it. So it started by cutting it, and then I would fold it, and the gaps would become bigger. And slowly, slowly I started then using a knife to push open the gaps, then started cutting it in different directions. Now cutting it in different directions is what animates it, because when I put a certain information on one side and another on a grid, 50-50%, if I cut it in one angle, I'll only get that part of the image there, and if I cut it from another angle, the opposite angle, so that is what animates it. So that's the language that I found by playing with clay. After that, no play, because now I have to make grids, and it's all very pre-planned, and I have to, once decided, I have to finish the whole damn thing. So, yes.
Lovely, thanks. And actually, I was, windows and little holes that you can look into another world is also something that's common to all their works, from Tariq's work to Shalini's, to all the little windows of light that you can see in the three works of the photographers. I really like that, there's the sense of anticipation that you want to look beyond what is already visible. And that's so beautiful. So, in the works of Dinesh, Vivek, and Ganesh, of course, you've told us about what it means to work with nature, with the uncontrollable, and you're sort of submitting yourself to that world. But as an artist that's working, I don't know if you were aware of movement as a state of being while you were photographing, but now as we are on this panel talking about movement, what is that sense for you as artists to work with nature, with the idea of moving with nature? Of course, in a forest, in a grove, we are looking at movement in different forms, but how is the artist moved? Were you moved in different ways while you were doing this?
To me, photography is about stopping the moment. While we are photographing, it's always, everything is moving. We are actually stopping the moment, recording it in a 2D plane, and like airport, we are showing that to a passenger or the viewer, and just transferring the moment from whatever we recorded to in his mind. Because all of a sudden, when he sees all these things, he can see. Yesterday when I shared this photo on my social media, few people asked, "Are those real trees? Are those real branches or what on the top?" So they are, because they are seeing on a social media, right, like 2D planes, they are thinking I captured actual trees on the top, right? So it created the movement. I recorded a movement on a 2D plane and then transferred it to the viewer. So that is what movement is for me.
Lovely. Thank you for bringing in that element of stopping the movement. That makes total sense in the sense of pause. Ganesh?
I think I would say, instead of portraying the movement, I am moved by the nature. So there is I know you probably are aware of a beautiful rendition by M.S. Subbulakshmi called the Jagadodharana. Such a beautiful song which resonates very well with me when I do a nature photography. So we, the nature photographers, are like Yashoda. Okay, so nature is Krishna. So Yashoda thinks this Krishna is a very small boy, and she plays with Krishna. So we, the nature photographers, are like that. I mean, we think we are great, and okay, I'm a nature photographer, I photograph this. I think that is not how I want to approach the nature after 30 years of doing what nature photography is. First, I submit myself with a folded hand, and then I do the nature photography. So in that song, there are some things which are very very unique. It says, "Aganita mahimana nigamake silukada aganita mahimana." So something which you cannot comprehend, something which you cannot prove, and something which is so precious, and Yashoda thinks he is her son. Okay, so what kind of a blissful ignorance that is, and that is the same ignorance that we nature photographers live in.
Right, I'm reminded of Kabir also, who says we can only see as much as the eye can hold, and what lies out of our sight is this whole world. So it's something similar. Vivek, would you like to talk about movement?
Yes, I'll just make it very short. I like how nature surprises me, and I let nature come to me with no judgments, and I just go with the flow. So I think that would be the best and short answer to that. Yes. Good.
Thank you so much. I think we have time for one or two questions from the audience, if there are any. Any questions for any of the artists? Come on, there has to be some questions.
These are very insightful things to listen. We don't have to question. Stitch your lips.
Stitch your lips. Great, thank you very much. Thanks to all the artists. I mean, yes, if you are in T2, if you haven't yet watched their works, please do. And I'd like to leave on this note. In the earlier panel, I think Tanya was saying that we've always been a culture where the humans have always been part of nature. And what we've done in the recent years, in the recent decades, and this begins with our education systems and so on, we always like to work in binaries. We think, you know, things are always separate. We keep nature separate from culture. We keep nature separate from technology. What the airport has, what BIAL and especially at T2, what they've actually envisioned is a place where everything can come together once again. You know, you see all the shimmer, you see all the modern technology, you see these massive spaces, and there is also a large space that holds nature within it. You know, it's like being in the embrace of nature, and this entire space itself embracing nature, which metaphorically is a beautiful thing to do, and that's something we are losing. The works of all these artists are again a reminder for all of us to integrate everything into who we are as individual people and also into our own spaces. And that may be a great future of envisioning something for having a vision for Bangalore city. We know the problems that the city is having. There are policy makers that will have to take all these into consideration, and I think the BIAL has shown us the way in some ways. So on that note, thank you very much. Thanks to all the artists.